Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Bacano, and I am the Global Channel Marketing Manager here at Instructure. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to our webinar today. We are talking today about revolutionizing the way of learning. It is my pleasure to host this webinar. It is not a usual webinar. It is an open discussion webinar. So we would like to have all of your participation, please, to have all of your inputs, because this is a two-way opportunity for us to discuss, for us to listen to your challenges that you're facing within your institutions, as well as any other questions that you may have based on the content that is being presented to you today. I would love to introduce our two speakers. Terence is my colleague here at Instructure, and he comes with over 2 decades of work experience in education, in technology, in bringing the light of education to many students, to countless institutions all over the world, especially in APAC. Now he is the head of channels here at Instructure, and it is a great pleasure for me to host him, as well as our second panelist, Mr. Rahul Singh, who is the Senior Director of EdTech at Harbinger Group. Now, Mr. Singh comes with over 18 years of experience in the digital learning space, and he has been instrumental to host global organizations, ISVs, and educational institutions in implementing myriad of new initiatives around their digital learning and product development strategy. Now, without further ado, I would like them to introduce themselves and to open the microphone.
Hello, hi everyone, and good morning. I'm Terence, and thank you very much, Paul, for the very warm introduction. I'm definitely very delighted to be here, to be sharing, hopefully to be able to share a little bit of what we think about the topic today, specifically in terms of digital transformation for education. And of course, with my co-panelist, Mr. Rahul Singh from Harbinger. Raul.
Thank you, Terence, and thank you, Paul. Thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time out to join us for this interesting discussion. I think the times we are in, there's enough being said about the importance of the role of higher education moving into the, preparing the next generation of workforce for the future of workplace. And that's where Harbinger has been instrumental in revolutionizing the way people learn and people work. And we are very proud to be partnering with, a leading digital player in that space, Instructure. And in this conversation today, we'll look at some of the ways and discuss the trends and various kind of technologies. So looking forward to the conversation. And as Paul said, this is more of not of a webinar, but more of an open discussion. So we'll look forward to your participation in it. And thank you, Paul, for having me today.
My pleasure. I would like to start with a little bit about Instructure. We are currently the fastest growing LMS in the world. We have been doing this since we were born in the cloud in 2008. And that has been actually one of the pillars for our success. Nowadays, all of the Ivy League universities are using Canvas LMS, tens of millions of users worldwide, as well as thousands and thousands of institutions in over 70 countries. Now, our mantra here at Instructure is that through software, content, professional development, open integrations, and an amazing user community, the Instructure learning platform makes EdTech more personal and student success more equitable. Now, about Harbinger Group. Harbinger Group has been over 30 years in the e-learning and education space. They've been developing products, solutions, and technology accelerators to make you and your future ready for the digital transformation. For over 30 years, they have partnered with customers to grow their companies, teaming with them to launch new products and navigate business challenges through difficult times. Without further ado, we said at the very beginning that this is not going to be one of those boring presentations you just sit there and yawn. I would like us to move straight away into a poll. Now, could you please take out your trusty mobile phones, scan this QR code, or enter the URL as you can see on your screen, and let us know what you think. We would love to deep dive into all of your ideas, all of the different challenges, and please answer the questions in there. Just going to give everyone a couple of minutes. I know scanning things with the mobile phone sometimes on the screen it's a little bit hard, so let's all take 2 minutes.
I think some of the words are coming out. Maybe we can switch over to the web.
Let's just, yeah, sure. Let's give them maybe 30 seconds more. I wish I could play some music, maybe some elevator music, but I don't have the capability. So
it's interesting. Yeah, I'm actually looking at the website right now. Some of the responses that's actually coming in.
Great, awesome. Love the involvement. Now, I think that's almost 2 minutes. Get into the different slides. Oops, there's the test. Let me just refresh this. Fantastic. Better content delivery, innovation, online webinars, learn, work, play, AI and machine learning, integration, online platforms, live, productivity, ebooks, accessibility, modernization, business processes, a change in the way we consume content or deliver content. Gentlemen, what do you think? Please, I'm opening the floor up to your thoughts.
I mean, Paul, I'll say that, this is a very good mix of creating a hybrid learning environment where you are setting up the students for success, and you are ensuring that the faculties can spend more time with the students. And at the end of the day, we are preparing the workforce for the future. For example, if you see productivity, now the way we could look at this is it could be productivity of faculties, right? Because a recent McKinsey report said that the faculties and instructors have been spending almost 50% of their time in doing mundane activities. So some of those, if they could be automated, they could be spending more time with students. Integrations is big, definitely. In any higher education setup or educational institution, there are multiple systems that are, working in tandem. And the important part is they need to talk to each other. And once they start talking to each other, which is through deep integrations, then it makes things much more easier for them. Learn, work, play is something very interesting because, the millennials, the Gen Zs, and then I think the next one they're calling Gen Alpha. So there's a different style of way that these students would like to consume content and learn, and at the same time they want to play with the content and those kind of things. So this looks like a very good mix of modernization is big. People who already have some sort of digital infrastructure, but it's kind of not up to the mark, modernization. So this opens up the forum very well for a very intuitive discussion.
Yeah,
Thank you, Rahul.
yeah, just
Terence?
I mean what Rahul has mentioned, and all these are great. And in fact, it's all part of the whole thinking around digital transformation. I mean, everyone defines digital transformation very, very differently. But I think more importantly, how technology actually works for you specifically, and some of these are very personal. In my own experience as well, in terms of what transformation began and how transformation has actually begun, is all about the change internally, and how do you actually adopt that change specifically in terms of both effectiveness and efficiency. In fact, it's interesting that Raul actually quoted from McKinsey. And in fact, I think that's one of the major move in terms of how not to be slave to technology, and how do you actually have that control over technology to ensure that you make technology work for you. And that's no different in terms of how we will look into how the technology play a huge role going forward. I mean, there's no looking back in terms of how we could actually incorporate that into education. And it's interesting that Rahul also touched upon the new generation and the generation of learners nowadays, touch on technology next to nothing. It's almost like they're born with a mobile phone or a cell phone in their hands. And it's not a big surprise, right? Because of the community and of course the statistics later that Paul will be sharing. It's quite, I mean, it's no big surprise, and I'm sure that many of you would know this, but it is pretty profound in terms of the set of data that we will see in a bit. Thank you.
Yeah, and having traveled around India, I must say that it's one of the technological marvels of the 21st century, because India hasn't gone through, in the Western world, you went for like the horse and then the car, and then you had the phone and everything. It actually went through leapfrogging all of those steps into becoming a technological powerhouse. Nowadays, as we've seen with all the different successes, even into space, right? I mean, ISARO has been one of the top contenders to rival the United States, NASA, as well as sending probes to the moon. So why not bring all of that back, all of that passion? Imagine students that want to be astronauts, to go to the moon via the ISRO, or put a lunar lander, and bring that back into the classroom. And one of the other things that I loved about that, what Rahul actually mentioned, is about why do educators want to become educators? Let's take a human step back. Is the interactions with the students, right? And the more we can help them automate the mundane tasks, the more we can give back the freedom for them to do what they actually love doing. Now, I'm going to move back into the slides and talk exactly about that, digital transformation. Have a look at this. That is insane. The amount of mobile phone users in India. Going back into the previous point about the digital transformation that is actually happening, has been happening for over a decade in India. And if we look into also what Terence alluded to, the device choice. And now I'll pass it on actually to Terence. He can talk more about it.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, I mean, if you look into this slide, and I think Raul will chime in later as well. Looking into the whole contextualization of consumers' direction, right? And obviously, I think many of us would have more than one device. I mean, in the generation today, and as I mentioned and Raul mentioned early on, many of these digital natives will have easily at least one or two devices, so specifically not just mobile phone. We're talking about laptops, even computers on hand. And absolutely, if you look into this, this is actually taken from a world report from new multi-screen world report from Google. You can actually check it out. And of course, when you look into it, there's a lot in terms of how we relate from the time that we actually spend and what we intend to accomplish, right? Location, again, it's based on contextualization. It can happen anywhere, anytime. And specifically in terms of our own attitude and state of mind, a lot in terms of the attitude right nowadays, when you look into learners' attitudes, all about taking responsibility of their own personal learning. And there's a lot of personalized learning attitude and of course approaches that we can take advantage of, specifically from a faculty point of view, from an instructor's point of view. I think that is one of the areas that we would love to see how technology could actually make a huge play on.
Thank you. Would you like to touch about computers, Terence, or should we move on to smartphones?
Raul, would you like to touch on this?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think I like that thing that Terence that you mentioned, that the kids today are born with these digital devices. I mean, it's just so intuitive. Even before they start talking or start walking, they can operate mobile phones, smartphones, and anything and everything they do on their devices, and inclusive of the learning. And they move from one device to the other rapidly. For example, if they're in an environment where they can open up their laptop and do things on their laptop, but when they're traveling, if they're in a metro or in a bus, they pull out their mobile devices and use it. So the digital devices in this entire thing plays a big role. And I think the way people are becoming more and more comfortable in using these devices, that's where the education needs to catch up with the adoption of digital devices.
Certainly. I mean, smartphones not only keep us connected, but also 38% of the daily media interactions, right? And not only for entertainment, but also for communication. And as you've mentioned, 40% are out of home. They're consuming content out of home. So it makes a lot of sense for us as Instructure to really focus on what the students want and the way they want to consume and study, really, consume the content, learn and study. This is, for example, a quote from Kim and al. Students perceive online discussions as more equitable and more democratic than traditional classroom discussions. This is a very interesting quote. Would you like to comment on this one, gentlemen?
This is a very powerful quote, I must say. I think those two words, equitable and democratic, there has been a lot of talk about bringing equity in the education space. Just for example, not necessarily in all parts of the world, the internet connectivity has the same level. So there was a huge push in terms of policy making that we should make it equitable. And I think I would like to invite our audience to share their thoughts in the chat if they have any, whether they would agree to this or disagree to this. I would certainly agree that in a classroom setup environment, there's always smart kids, average students, and not so smart kids in a classroom. and introverts, extroverts, different type of personalities. So the online discussions definitely gives them an opportunity to be more freedom to express themselves and not being shy of asking questions or sharing their thoughts. So yeah, we see some responses coming in. Yeah, so that's my take on this, but very powerful quote. I loved it.
I think there's a question from Tony. How about daylight hologram in teaching? So, so a hologram in what sense are you referring to? More like a VR, AR basis?
Yeah, I think Terence, yeah, we'll love to see what Tony has to say about it. But yeah, kind of extension. See, I look at it in terms of, setting up this metaverse kind of situation for the online hybrid learning solutions, wherein you have different type of things. For example, it could be augmented reality, virtual reality, and holograms is also kind of an extension to a certain extent of virtual reality. Let's say if we have to show a molecular reaction, if we are explaining a molecular reaction, if we can project that to the hologram, which kind of brings it in a virtual reality environment and shows exactly how a molecular reaction happens, that's immersive for the students. So yeah, it's still in the early stages, but who knows, quite possible.
I agree, because one of the things that really inspires me with this quote is the fact that it's bringing education not only to a lot more students, but also making education a lot more linear, a lot more democratic. Say, for example, you have a child, a brilliant, super intelligent child, but they live up in the mountains, right? And they can't really travel that far, or the quality of the school or the university, that they can actually attend is subpar, just because of the economic or the family situations. Now, as you've mentioned, Rahul, with this one I've picked up for $15, right? So if you get one of these for $15, you slide your mobile phone in, that probably costs about $100, one of those Oppo ones. You have the metaverse in your hands. You can see the molecular reactions, and who knows, maybe that will be the next breakthrough in cosmology, right? I mean, Chandrayaan is named after a famous Indian scientist, right? So and there's a lot of other very famous Indian scientists that, if given the opportunity, we can have even more of them. There are a few more comments here.
Yeah, when we talk
Dr.
about
Sandhya.
Yeah, Dr. Sandhya mentioned about, a little bit more about from kids who are, or students who are actually bolder, right? And RK actually mentioned about specifically on giving more accessibility to introverted kids. And we have seen as well, statistically, from both the analytics report as well as a survey that, we have actually cohorted and encouraged more students, specifically from that group of introverted kids or less vocal kids, to be able to participate in various different ways, specifically around using technology to convert that response. And also, of course, technology played a huge role. I mean, for example, in some of the analytics, we're able to look into the learning outcomes, specifically from a student's angle. I think that gives a lot of more access to them. And of course, when we talk about equitable access, we're talking about accessibility. Great, that is a great example when we talk about students who are not able to participate or attend a certain type of classes because of geographical or even economic reasons. And absolutely, I think all of us here agree that technology could play a wider or even bigger role in that.
Absolutely. Now, we've spoken about mobile phone. Let's deep dive a little bit more. So this is just some data. 99% of undergraduate students use a smartphone, 61% in rural India. That is last year. So I'm 100% sure that this has actually increased. And 80% of students, and they also prefer smartphones than installing applications or going wrong with a laptop. I mean, we may be old, gentlemen. We still use laptops, but definitely the students that love the mobile phones and the tablets. 96% own a smartphone running iOS or Android, right? Now, if we have a look at the adoption in here, it's pretty wild to see the different operating systems. 96% is Android. And also Apple is there, definitely. And if we look in here, how do they use those? How do they use their mobile phone? 13% is mobile web. So from our perspective here at Instructure, we've listened to our students. We looked into the data and we made a strategic decision many years ago and said, mobile is king. So we've been developing our apps. Our Canvas LMS is definitely on the app. It's app focused, and that actually goes back into our mantra. Remember, from the very beginning, 2008, we started as a cloud native organization. We didn't just start, okay, let's have a server in the basement and we'll work it out eventually, because that clearly doesn't work in the future. And I remember going to a networking function and speaking to some random person over there. He goes like, so where do you work? Oh, Instructure, we do Canvas. Oh, Canvas, great. Look, I'm studying my PhD on it. I was like, great, awesome. and how do you find it? Oh, it's fantastic, because my commute is about an hour long. Therefore, I can actually use this time wisely instead of wasting it. I don't know, browsing for cat videos or being on Facebook all day. So now, what I would love to do next is engage into a second poll. So please take out your phone again, since we love our mobile phones, and scan that QR code, and let's see the different questions.
While we are actually waiting for responses actually being keyed in, I think it's a multiple choice question. I think that's a question from RK. Are these kids using mobile phones for educational purpose? And I believe when you look into the statistics, right? I mean, we're talking about more in terms of the penetration of devices. Now, whether it's for educational, entertainment, or any other purposes, is actually beyond in terms of obviously in terms of the statistics. That particular one early on that we shared is not addressing to that. But I think more importantly is that we acknowledge, of course, the usage of the cell phone or the mobile phone is extremely high. It's what and how we are going to take advantage of that situation that would enable the instructors, teachers, similarly, to take that advantage, right, and leveraging that to how we would engage with the students and with the learners alike, specifically from that point of view, because easily, if you ask me about 15, 20 years ago. And I'm not giving away my age, of course, but specifically when, when you're in higher education studies and, everything was on the laptop, right? Everything was done on the laptop from the LMS system of the old days. And of course, from everything that you do. But hardly nowadays, when you go into a perspective from a from a learner nowadays, yeah, you commonly see a lot of more shares in terms of cell phones or even tablets, or even phablets, right? Phone plus tablet, that is being used more often than not. I'll share from my point of view. I have a daughter that's actually in school, and they use tablet more so than a laptop for their for their learning and for their teaching needs. And it's interesting because the fact that more often than not, you will see a lot of that usage specifically from a mobile basis. But enough talk. I think Paul is just getting into the okay. So
well, there you go. It's
through
easy.
that.
Yeah, all of the above. So what are the students' expectations from the digital transformation in higher ed space? A hybrid learning ecosystem to enable them to consume content anytime, anywhere, acquire skills to be ready for the future workspace. So on a personal note, giving away my age here, I do remember when I was doing my first in high school, not in high school, my first assignments, and my teachers were really pissed off at me because I was actually using Google to do research, right? And second one is because I started studying marketing. I remember when I was doing my degree, we were studying all of this theoretical stuff, hypothetical, like, great, let's talk about the SWOT analysis, and we're gonna do this. When I got into the workforce, they were like, Rado, do you know how to do Google AdWords? Do you know how to do LinkedIn Campaign Manager? Sorry, what does that do? Okay, next. So I guess it's extremely important that we not only listen to the students, but also listen to the future employers, those students. We look into how we can get our students ready, right? And one more comment that I wanted to add, or what Terence mentioned, and also the question, right, from RK. Do they use it for educational purposes? Well, if they're on Facebook, we here at Instructure identify that. So nowadays, actually, your teacher can write to you via Canvas to your Facebook page. They'd be like, Johnny, have you submitted your assignment? Oh, no, sorry, I forgot. It's due tomorrow. Oh, thank you, sir. So without further ado, let's continue with the discussion here in terms of what are the student expectations. Students don't open your emails, right? They're all about in-app notifications. Facebook, SMSs, 160 characters. That is so 1999 Nokia 3310 that, people probably know that Nokia from memes, that it's indestructible. But let's be honest, let's communicate with our students the way they want to. Native apps versus responsive design. A lot of mobile phone users are complaining, hey, your website looks so bad, or your app is so bad in terms of the experience. This is where we've spent a lot of time here at Instructure, making sure that the experience is second to none. Before I go next, any other comments, gentlemen?
Paul, I think at this stage, I just wanted to kind of bring up a point that Ravish has mentioned earlier in the chat. And this kinds of ties back to the poll results that we had. The options that we had was an online hybrid learning solution, consuming content anytime, anywhere, and getting the skills ready for the workforce of future. And just going back to your story, Paul, I think the World Economic Forum says one of the top 10 skills that you need to have to excel in the future of workplace is empathy.
There's
There's no, right. And it's very true. I mean, the HR of the organizations these days are driving initiatives to bring in the empathy into the culture of the organization. And whether you have done an MBA or an MBBS or an engineering degree, you've never been taught about this. This is an intrinsic value, but somewhere down the line, this has to be brought about. So these skills of future, creating an online hybrid learning solution and consuming content anytime, anywhere. Going back to Ravish's point, is that there are benefits. Ravish says that, there are benefits of bringing in the digital learning, but equal emphasis needs to be given to what digital learning is not offering. And I totally agree with that. And an example that Ravish has given is knowledge, stickiness of the knowledge, right? And coming to that, I think this push notifications, this is primarily nudging the students to do things. That notification on the Facebook that, hey, and without being intrusive, hey, your homework is due. This is just a reminder, you might want to complete it and submit it. So there is a theory called Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And he's a scientist, and he says that anything and everything that you learn in a classroom environment, the moment you step out of that classroom environment, 60% of that education or knowledge is lost in the first hour of instruction. And then gradually, there's very little that is left with you. That's where this push notifications or the nudge thing comes into picture. And Richard Thaler won a Nobel Prize in the year 2017 for implementing this nudge theory, which primarily means is that sending out specific notifications at specific time intervals to individuals to bring in behavioral changes. And I believe the stickiness of the knowledge, of course, there are many things that needs to be done, but one of a definitive thing is the nudge thing. And, just for the lack of time, I'm not going into details, but if you do a quick Google on how nudge has been successful, Google has implemented it, Virgin Airlines has implemented it, and they have been successful in it. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share, Paul.
Thank you. Now, I love that you mentioned that, because this is a quote from Dr. Terry. The change to remote learning offered faculty and technology support people the conversations that they wanted to have for a long time. So this draws back into the unifying of faculty, of educators, of students, and everyone else, and enabling them to have those conversations. Like I remember you've mentioned right at the beginning, there are different types of students, different personalities, right? That maybe in the classroom, they're a little bit more introverted. They don't want to raise their hand because they don't feel comfortable. However, in a digital environment, they are feeling a lot safer. And I think that's my take on it. What about you, Terence? What do you think about this quote?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look into the change of remote learning, is not just about remote learning, right? And a lot of it has been around the hybrid and high flex. High flex is literally hybrid plus flexibility of meeting face to face. That increasingly, of course, not just during pandemic and post pandemic as well, as a lot more education institutions, both K-12 as well as higher education, still are looking at investing how they could prepare the next wave. We know it's not if, but it's when the next wave will happen. And we're not talking only just pandemic. It's all about readiness. It's all about that business, continuity process that is actually being in place. And absolutely, when you look into this, technology plays a large part of it. And I think this is something that, of course, will bring us forward to accelerate more in terms of what we can do, or what we can do to responsibly look into an adoption of technology that would support the education push, right? And specific to this, and of course, it's definitely never too late, and it's always a continuous process of change.
Yeah, exactly. And I love what you mentioned. It's not about if, it's about when. Because here's another quote, well, a bit of research. Is your institution implementing hybrid services outside the classroom, such as career services, advising, counseling, telemedicine, or other campus lifestyle activities? 59%, they said yes, already. And 29% after that said, yes, we are engaged in this to some extent. This is a 2020, 2021. I think after the pandemic, like you said, Terence, if we run this poll again, we'll probably be a little bit like 90% yes. And the other 9% or 10%, I would love to have a chat with them and say, mate, what are you doing? I mean, the whole world is moving digital. We've got the metaverse coming. And what happens with, I remember a quote from Henry Ford when he was asked, why are you pushing so hard for the Model T? And he goes, well, look, if I was going to listen to the broader market, everyone was telling me that everyone wants a faster horse, right? Now, 100 years later, we have the next revolution happening in the transportation industry, which is electrification, which is hydrogen, right? And for the people that don't see this happening, they will end up like the horseshoe makers. Moving on into what other results have shown is there is a lot of traditional face-to-face. However, if we put in together the remote, the blended hybrid, and online, have a look at this. Huge uptake. I'll probably say about 75 to 80% already is non-face-to-face. And gentlemen, it's even more interesting, pandemic or not, this is also happening in the workplace. If we look at the way that we work today, I am based in the Gold Coast in Australia. I work from home. Terence is in Singapore working from home. And Rahul as well. He goes sometimes into the office, but he's also working from home, right? So going back to the point of we need to prepare our students. And how do we prepare our students for the workforce if we as institutions, as teachers, don't prepare ourselves and don't catch up with the times? Now, let's take our third poll. I promise is the last one because we're coming up to the end of our presentation here, and really love the engagement over on the chat as well as on the poll. And please, again, take out your trusty mobile phone, have a scan, and let's see what the poll results will be. Rahul, any questions or any comments about what we've just discussed so far?
No, I think, first of all, I would definitely agree that thank you, audience, for the participation on the chat and on the polls. I think the results of the second polls were kind of, it signs of kind of sends a very strong signal. The good part is that at least all of us in this room today are thinking in the same direction. that these are the things that we need to excel. And to this point is there is not one fixed solution to it. There's not a mathematical formula for this that, you apply this, you'll go from point A to point B. What I believe is that, like-minded people and organizations and educational institutions who want to give back to the community need to think in the same direction and then create an ecosystem which kind of fosters these thoughts and helps people excel. Before the pandemic, especially in the US, there's a lot of foreign students, I think, and most of them are from the Asian countries like India, China. They would go to these US Ivy Leagues and these costly colleges, the Stanfords of the world, try and get a degree to get a better life. But COVID changed it. Now, someone sitting in a small city in India can take an online degree or a certification course from a reputed college or university in US. Now, that's not just because there is a technology to do that, but because there was a need to implement that change. And I think somewhere in the conversation, Terence had mentioned a couple of things. First is the change management, that the stakeholders, the people who make the policies, who drive the policies, need to agree on certain points to drive the change. And then the second part that Terence mentioned was adoption. And then it's imperative that the technology is so embedded in our lives that it doesn't come as a kind of a additional thing, or wherein we have to work hard to get it right. It should be seamless, embedded in the system, and that's where it increases the adoption. So I'm interested, very intrigued in kind of touching upon some of these points later in the conversation after the poll results in terms of change management, adoption, how seamless the technology is, and these kind of things.
Thank you, Rahul. This is so, the results of this are so much different from the previous poll, where everyone agreed 100%. This is a even-Steven split that I've never seen before. So 30% automating repetitive tasks, 30% creating a hybrid learning environment, and then 20% connecting the dots between education and employment, ease of implementation, and cost of ownership. This is great. Gentlemen, would you like to comment on the results of the poll?
Absolutely. I think, one of the major things that I'm actually looking at this poll currently is all about recognizing all the various different portion of, how how you would actually expect in terms of a digital transformation that you would have actually taken place, right? So, if you look into the poll itself, creating a hybrid learning environment, automating the repetitive tasks, I think that is pretty much equal, but I think there's a lot that we do recognize and acknowledge as well, that, the automation of repetitive tasks or very mundane or very administrative tasks, so that, they can spend more time with the students. In fact, it is not very, and it is no big surprise. I mean, not in India. In fact, in many parts of the world, in the United States as well, we're seeing a huge shift of teachers leaving the vocation, and we are also playing our part in Instructure to enable many of these educators to make their jobs easier by automating a lot of this. We're seeing this in Singapore, we're seeing this in Philippines as well, and the statistics is not much very different from India, and I believe that we can do more to help educators in that regard, right? And of course, when you look into the ease of implementation, making it as easy as possible, making it next to nothing for many not only educators but also students to be able to learn or to be onboarded, right? Specifically in terms of how they would use a particular technology. And I think that's the, one of the major mantra in Instructure. If you look into our it's interesting. I mean, not to sell Instructure solution in that sense, right? But it's interesting when we look into our the usage of our apps. In fact, our mobile apps, whether it be from Android or even Apple's perspective, if you go into Google Play Store and Apple App Store, we're very heartened to know that we have very, very, very high positive testimonials, and it's not because of that high testimonials, positive testimonials, the development of those apps, when we look into early on that slide that Paul have actually shared, mobile apps versus a native app, that we take huge pride in terms of knowing how educators and students actually learn from technology devices and implementing it into their daily plans and the daily lives specific around education and how they actually use that native app.
Excellent. Would you like to continue with regards to that, why we've gone this way from the very beginning in terms of the cloud decision that we've made?
I think, yeah, absolutely, Paul. More than happy to do so. I think that's literally flowing into this particular slide, right? And if you look into what Instructure is actually doing, I think many of the attendees and delegates here, when you look into Instructure, you know more about the brand Canvas. And so Canvas is a product within Instructure that offers the learning management system as well as analytics and a whole host of other education solutions within the platform, right? So Canvas learning management system is not just a learning management system, we're more than that. In fact, we tie back in a huge community of millions of users around the world, specific to not only using the platform as is, but more importantly, to be able to open up that equitable access. I like that particular term, right? Because honestly, when we look into the platform, we never have actually envisioned how it would actually touch lives, all around the world, by ensuring that we're able to, literally share that, one vision, or that singular vision. I wouldn't say one vision, but that same singular vision to elevate students learning, and especially amplifying the teaching as well. And if you look into it, you want to go to the next slide, Paul?
Of course.
Specific around when we talk about how we are born in the cloud and how we are actually native, specific from a solutions basis, from native from the cloud solution basis. There's a whole, as Paul has mentioned early on, there's a huge load of advantages when you look into software as a service. And from Instructure's point of view, when we actually offer the solution, there's a lot of advantages coming from that. I mean, since our founding in 2008, we have never looked back. And 2008, back then, cloud and being a cloud native app, and that was pretty new. And can you imagine that back then, 2008, I think it was just the founding of Android operating system, and iOS is in its infancy. So again, this is something that is that was actually extremely new, but we knew that Instructure took that direction, and they knew that is the future. And specific, we have never looked back since. And in the last 14 years, that has actually proven a lot of critics wrong. But I think it's not just about proving the critics wrong. I think we wanted to when we look into the strategy and we look into the vision of creating a solution that will make a real difference, and not only real difference, but a compelling difference for educators worldwide, as well as student learners worldwide. That, you know, if you look into learning management system back then, it was pretty archaic. You know, when we look into it, a lot of them are actually on-premise. There was actually not only on-premise, and some of them were cloud hosted. And cloud hosted, again, you know, it does has its own issues. But you know, from a software as a service, it actually, the onus is actually put on Instructure to manage and to ensure that, you know, you are literally headache free, you know, going and focusing on what you do best, literally, which is, you know, in educating the next generation. So when you look into it, you know, a lot of these benefits, and I'm not going to read through it, but absolutely, I think these 8 points, you know, these 7-8 points truly look into the benefits of how true, you know, SaaS-based cloud native solution has to offer, specifically from the ed tech point of view, right? Education technology point of view.
Yeah, and we've been, if you look at this squid growth, the first adopters of online education that never really made a change to cloud native. Some disappeared, some kind of made it in a way, but look at Blackboard, for example. When I went to uni, it was only Blackboard. And remember, the UI was so bad. It reminded me more of, I don't know, Windows 95 or Windows 3.1, right? So I absolutely hated it. Now, in comparison to what we've got nowadays, it's just a whole different story. And if you look at the way that Canvas has grown and continues to grow, is because of everything that we've spoken about here. Experience-centric, so people-centric, that determines the technology, and continuous innovation and improvement, right? I would love to have one more slide here, and this is a one of our customers here. She's actually talking about the COVID and how a lot of us felt during that time. So, you know, bleak times. A lot of these institutions didn't know how to go forward, right? So during COVID, we're looking for the best solution to move our flagship programs to world-class leading learning management system that would match our quality and premium work in international education. So not only is she talking about Indian education, but using Canvas actually enabled her to go global and provide that same quality in premium work that she's so proud of on an every single day basis to everyone else in the world. I know we touched about this, connecting the dots between education and employment. I think we're almost at time. Any final comments about this, gentlemen?
Raul, would you like to take this and some comments about this?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, Terence, Paul. I think one of the important aspects, or in the current context, in my opinion, the key aspect of education is to connect the dots between education to employment. And that's where I believe the digital transformation can play a big role. For example, I mean, during the conversation, Paul mentioned that, you know, we should have our 1 year in terms of towards the organizations, what they're expecting from the education system. So imagine a scenario wherein, you know, in fact, in current situation, literally every industry has skill shortage. Okay, you pick up any industry, be it information technology or manufacturing or healthcare, big time crisis in healthcare, skill shortage. And then on the other hand of the side, there are multiple graduates and postgraduates who are coming out of the education system and they're still looking for jobs. So there is definitely some portion which is missing there. And that one portion could be, are we listening to the job market, what they're asking for? So one aspect to look at is from a digital transformation perspective is, if the data from the job market can be fed into the education system, and then the education system can look into incorporating or inculcating some of those things in their ecosystem and help the students become job ready. And there's multitude of things. I think there's a lot to talk about this. This could be one of the other topics which we could, discuss on a separate discussion forum. But those are my thoughts, that digital transformation is not just about one application, one platform, but it's about creating that ecosystem where you can, connect the dots between education to employment.
Thank you very much. And on that note, I would love to open up to all of our audience members. Please use the chat. Let us know your thoughts about everything we've discussed today. And anything else, maybe that we've not even touched upon. And as Rahul so thoughtfully alluded to, this is an ongoing conversation. Maybe we should do a 2.0 on this.
I would very much like that. And absolutely, I think we could always organize another one sooner rather than later.
LMS versus LXP, RK.
Learning experience, yeah.
And nice discussion. However, digital trends is something we could have as a sequel. Absolutely. Would love to deep dive into that. And Dr. Sandhya Advani says, what changes do you foresee in the online platform going ahead in the future? Great questions. Any takes on those ones, gentlemen? I know we're at time, but let's extend it for maybe a couple of more minutes.
I'll take Dr. Sandhya's questions that, going forward, I foresee a lot of personalization happening in the learning space. Currently also it's happening, but it's going to increase manifolds. And that's where artificial intelligence, machine learning can, play a big role. They are one of those components. And going to RK's points, if you ask me, RK, any platform which gives a seamless experience to the users. So for me, if you ask me, these are just terms that have been coined for some of the other reasons. They are one and the same.
Brilliant response. Thank you. Very insightful discussion on how this digital transformation is going to shape up and how we as key contributors will be at the home of it. How do you think the evolution of these transformations will look like? Who will be the key contributors to it?
Well, there are definitely multiple aspects of this, and thank you, Vikal, for that question. And absolutely, when you talk about the evolution of these transformations will look like, I mean, it takes several stakeholders in this, and absolutely, the stakeholders from the educators and students it plays a huge role. What they're looking at, what they need, what are they using, what are the tools, what are the facilities and infrastructures available, and of course, from a technology point of view, the creators, the developers, the innovators, right? And when you talk about some of these evolution would look like, I mean, it's all about some of the items that Rahul has actually suggested. Going forward, it's a lot more machine learning about about AI as well, artificial intelligence, and all about AR. And when we talk about, even looking at that next generation of technology, then, the I would say not even the sky is the limit. You know, universe is really an unlimited realm of innovation and creativity. So again, you know, for us in Instructure, you know, we don't put those limits. It's all about how can we provide that platform, we provide that stage to unravel and to really untie those knots of creativity. And that's the reason why, you know, if you look into Instructure, our partnership to different technology firms and different strategic partners is, I think, you know, really second to none. Specific to how we actually integrate and really partner with the different type of solution partners that are out there globally. And again, I think, you know, that answers some parts of what PCOP is actually looking for, I guess. But thank you.
Definitely. And I thought about this a long time. But I think to sum up everything that we've discussed here, and thank you, PCOP, for actually putting the dot on the I. Why is it called Canvas? It's called Canvas because it's not up to us, it's up to yourselves to take this canvas and create a Picasso. And on that note, I would like to thank everyone. I would like to thank Terence, Mr. Rahul, and everyone else that joined and participated in this discussion. Thank you. And this will be recorded, by the way, and will be shared with you post presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day there.